Welcome back. As we kind of jump into our third deep dive together, it's hitting me that we still haven't really nailed down a name for this show yet. What do you think?
It's true. We've been so caught up in the actual, the content each time that finding a catchy title has just totally slipped our minds.
Exactly. But I did have an idea. How about white card?
White card. Okay. I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
So imagine this. In Hong Kong, Cantonese slang, right? White card is like this plain white ID card. But here's the twist. It's the kind that people associate with patients from mental hospitals.
Oh, I see. I see. A little dark humor to kind of acknowledge that we do look at some pretty complex and sometimes even unsettling topics, huh?
Precisely. Of course, we're not at all implying anything about ourselves or you, our wonderful listeners. It's just a fun thought. And honestly, we would love to hear what you think about it. But, okay, let's move on and dive into today's deep dive. We're going to explore the world of this Hong Kong influencer. His name is Martin Owie, also known as Sai Chok Wong. And what we're looking at today is a first-person account from someone who seems pretty concerned about some of Martin's activities online.
Right. And it's really important for us to remember that this is just one person's perspective. We're here to unpack all the information together, analyze it critically, and definitely not to endorse any particular viewpoint, right?
Absolutely. And just a really quick disclaimer before we fully get started. Everything we discuss here is just for entertainment and informational purposes only. We're not at all responsible for the content or actions of any of the people that we mention. Okay, with that out of the way, let's rewind to 2019 in Hong Kong. The political scene was incredibly tense, lots of protests, social unrest, and all of this turmoil led to a wave of Hong Kongers leaving the city. And what happened is in their wake, we saw this rise of all these internet influencers, broadcasting their views to the world.
It's fascinating that our source, who was born and raised in Hong Kong but now lives in Europe, really emphasizes the fear surrounding the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. So that helps us understand the climate in which someone like Martin Owie could gain a following.
Exactly. So who is this Martin Owie? Well, he's got a YouTube channel under his own name, and he says he's British, living in Düsseldorf, Germany. His content. It's mainly anti-Chinese, and it often sparks heated debates with his audience, which is primarily Cantonese speaking.
And what's concerning is that our source is alleging that a lot of what he's sharing is fabricated. It's almost designed to just stir up controversy and attract viewers.
Yes, and that's where things get a bit more serious, right? The source claims that Martin has built this following that attacks anyone who disagrees with him, labeling them as CCP supporters, and he'll even go as far as fabricating stories about his critics, essentially inciting online harassment.
Yeah, these are serious accusations. And it makes you think about the ethics of doxing, publicly sharing someone's personal information online with malicious intent. Think of it like this. It's basically the digital version of posting someone's home address online just because you're angry with them, which is a huge invasion of privacy.
Yeah, for sure. And to illustrate this point, the source gives us a really specific example. They allege that during the pandemic, Martin was selling masks to his followers back in Hong Kong. And then when a customer complained about not getting their order, he retaliated by publishing their personal details online.
If that's true, that could definitely have some legal ramifications, both in terms of consumer protection, but also data privacy laws, especially considering all the regulations like GDPR that are in place to protect people's information.
And it doesn't just end there. The source also claims that Martin predicted that Hong Kong would go into lockdown during the pandemic and urged people to move their money abroad.
Wow.
They're saying that obviously the prediction never came true, but it caused a lot of anxiety and might have even led some people to make, some impulsive financial decisions.
Yeah, it really shows how much influence someone can have through these online platforms. And it makes you wonder about Martin's motivations, right? Could his whole anti-Chinese stance be a way to build a really devoted audience? An audience who's maybe more likely to buy his products or follow his financial advice.
That's such a good point. Because if his main goal is profit, it definitely changes how we see his content and his intentions, right? And it gets even more complicated when you bring in his claims about having ties to the UK Conservative Party.
Oh, right.
He's actually shown what looked like communications with the party. But our source is questioning whether they're actually real or not.
Interesting.
The source actually uses the word terrorism to describe Martin's actions. But I'm not sure if that's going too far. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a strong word for sure. But I think it shows just how scared and concerned they are. But yeah, could there be other ways to interpret his motives?
Totally. And I think the word terrorism brings up a really specific image, and we should be careful about the language we use.
Yeah.
But I do get why the source might feel that way. Their account really emphasizes how actions online can have consequences in the real world. It makes you think about how we even define harm in this digital age.
Right. It's not as clear cut anymore.
Is it just physical violence? Or can it also be, psychological, emotional, even financial?
Yeah, exactly. It's a super complex issue with no easy answers. I think it's key to remember, though, that the source isn't saying we should censor or suppress free speech. It seems like what they really want is more awareness and for people to feel a greater sense of responsibility, especially platforms like YouTube that host this kind of content.
Is a tricky balance, right?
Yeah.
On the one hand, we want to protect freedom of expression,
Mm-hmm.
but on the other, we need to make sure people are safe from potential harm.
Absolutely. It's not about silencing different opinions. It's more about holding people accountable for what could happen because of their words and actions, especially when they have a big platform and a lot of influence.
Right, right. And in the online world, where stuff spreads so quickly and can reach people globally, those limits become even more important. So, what does all this mean for us? Like, what can we as individuals actually do about all of this?
That is the big question, isn't it? It can feel overwhelming, like one person can't really make a difference when you think about how huge the internet is.
I know what you mean. It's easy to just kind of shrug and say, well, that's just the internet. But I don't think that's good enough.
Me neither. I think the first step is awareness, like we've been talking about, and educating ourselves about these issues, recognizing how misinformation is spread, understanding that real harm can be done.
So basically being more aware of the information we consume.
Exactly. Thinking critically about what we see and hear online, not just blindly accepting it, questioning sources, looking for evidence, considering different perspectives.
I like that. And what about when we come across something that just seems wrong? Like maybe it's harmful content or someone's spreading misinformation. What should we do then?
Well, you've got a few options. You can report it to the platform, like YouTube in this case. You could also try to have a respectful conversation, if that makes sense, to challenge the misinformation or offer a different point of view.
But what about if it's someone like Martin who just seems to shut down anyone who disagrees with him? How do you even approach that?
That's when it gets really tough, right? Because trying to talk to someone who's so set in their beliefs and hostile to other opinions can actually make things worse. Sometimes, honestly, the best thing to do is just disengage. Like, don't give them the attention they want.
So it's about being strategic, picking your battles.
Exactly. And putting our energy towards promoting good information, supporting reliable sources. Think of it like gardening. We can't control every weed that pops up, but we can make a space where truth and reason can actually grow.
I love that analogy. And, we're not alone in this.
Right.
There are tons of organizations and people working hard to fight misinformation, to teach people how to be media literate, and to push for a more responsible online world.
Absolutely. We can support those people in their work, share their message, and contribute to that collective effort to make a better digital space. Even small actions can make a difference.
I think this has been a really insightful deep dive. It reminds us that the internet is a complicated place. And if we want to be responsible online, we need to be aware, think critically, and be willing to have these tough conversations. Okay, so we've talked about what Martin has allegedly done, the worries that our source has, and also the bigger picture about free speech and responsibility online. But where do we go from here? What can we as, regular people actually do about any of this?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, huh? It can feel pretty overwhelming. Like one person can't really change anything in this whole massive online world.
Right. It's tempting to just kind of give up and be like, well, that's the internet for ya.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's got to be more we can do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it starts with awareness, like we've been saying. Understanding these problems, recognizing how misinformation spreads, and realizing that it can actually cause harm.
So basically, being smarter about what we consume online.
Exactly. We need to think critically about what we see and hear, not just automatically believe it. Question your sources, look for proof, consider different opinions.
Makes sense. What about when we run into something that just seems off, though? Like maybe it looks like dangerous content or someone's spreading false information. What can we do in those situations?
Well, there are some things you can do. You can report it to whatever platform it's on, like YouTube in this case. Or you could try to have a conversation with the person, but respectfully, to maybe challenge what they're saying or offer a different perspective.
Okay, sure. But what if it's someone like Martin who just seems like they'll shut down anyone who disagrees? How do you even begin to deal with that?
That's a tough one. Because trying to talk to someone who's so stuck in their beliefs and won't listen to anything else can actually make things worse.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is just walk away. Don't give them the attention.
Ah, I see. So it's kind of about picking your battles carefully.
Exactly. And focus your energy on supporting good information and reliable sources. It's like imagine you're gardening. We can't get rid of every single weed that pops up, but we can create the right conditions so that truths and reason have a chance to grow.
I really like that analogy. And hey, it's important to remember that we're not alone in this. There are people and groups out there who are working really hard to stop the spread of misinformation, to teach people how to evaluate information, and to just make the internet a more responsible place overall.
For sure, we can support those people, amplify their message, and be a part of that effort to build a healthier digital environment. Even small actions matter.
This deep dive has been really interesting and makes you think, it's a good reminder that the internet can be a tricky place. And if we want to use it responsibly, we need to be aware, think for ourselves, and be ready to have these sometimes difficult conversations.
It really is. And hey, speaking of conversations, I'm curious to hear what our listeners think about that name we were talking about, White Card. Does it work for this show? Let us know. Head over to our website or social media and share your thoughts.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what you think. This whole conversation about Martin Oey brings up a really important question. How do we balance our freedom to say what we want with the responsibility of making sure we don't hurt anyone? It's something we all need to think about.
It definitely is. And that's what we try to do here on, well, maybe White Card. We're not here to pick sides or tell you what's right. Our goal is to look closely at these complicated situations, explore different viewpoints, and hopefully help you learn how to handle this constantly changing digital world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay engaged.